Connect to more than the internet. You're watching SouthPoint online. Stick around after the message to hear some online exclusive announcements, plus more about what's happening at SouthPoint.
Hey, we are starting a brand new series called Life is a Tough Mudder. And some of you might be wondering, which would be fair if you've never done an obstacle race, is to be asking, what is a tough mudder? Well, you just saw a video about what a tough mudder is. It's kind of this obstacle race that people do. And all kinds of people do this obstacle race. It's not just for fitness people. It's not just for adrenaline junkies. All kinds of people who are couch potatoes, people who are with their work, people who just want to have fun with their friends, like all kinds of people do this tough mudder race, which is kind of this obstacle course race through mud and obstacles and barbed wire and all these kinds of things. And people do it, all kinds of people do it, but they do it for all kinds of reasons. Now, there are those gun-ho people that go, I'm going to conquer the world and I'm going to do it in the fastest time. And you can always tell because they're trampling over other people and not being really helpful, right? And there's other people who do it, they do it just to be fit and healthy and, they're going to drink their coconut water afterwards, right? And then there's some of you got that, right? And then other people, they do it because their job is doing this team building thing and they show up because they have to do it and they're just hoping that, that there's food at the end of it. And there's other people who just do it with their friends afterwards because they're going to go be wild and crazy. And so people do it for all types of reasons and all type of people do it. But here's the amazing thing. Regardless of the type of person, regardless of the goal that you have, every single person who takes part of a tough mudder, they have two things in common. They want to have a good race, and they know that there'll be obstacles as part of the race. And this got me thinking, this is a lot like life, isn't it? Come on, everyone smile. This is a lot like life, right? Listen, we all want a good life. Listen, I've never, in all my years of working with people, I've never ran into somebody and go, hey, Matt, I really want to have a horrible life. Can you help direct me in how to have a bad, horrible life where nothing works? The reality is regardless of where you are in your faith, regardless of whether you have no faith, some faith, or different faith, regardless of the color of your skin, the money in your bank account, the culture you came from, whether you have education or not education, listen, regardless of where you are or who you are, everyone wants a good life. And here's the second thing, and this is shocking. We get shocked by this, but this is the truth. We all know if you're over 7 years old is that you will face obstacles in life. It's just like the tough mudder. We want to have a good life and we're going to face obstacles. Matter of fact, listen, I have this example. Matter of fact, it just happened to me like 2 weeks ago. This is embarrassing and funny at the same time. Oh gosh. Listen, I discovered this last couple weeks ago, right? Listen, I don't know, any of you have teens? Anybody have teens at home? God bless you. I have great teens. Yeah, woo, teens. I love my teen daughters. They're awesome. They can be really helpful, but they think that our garbage disposal is an industrial landfill. Like whenever they do dishes, they just dump it in there and they just dispose. This thing is just going to crunch it all up and it'll go away. So a couple weeks ago, I came to the sink and the sink was full of water. And so I did what all smart people do is I covered put my hand kind of over where the drain would be, even though it was covered with water. And then I flipped the switch for the garbage disposal so it would chew it all up and it all drain and it wouldn't spot all of me and then we could keep going. But when I flipped the switch, nothing happened. It was just dead, just like nothing. You didn't even hear the motor. It didn't even make that funny sound, just nothing. And I went, man, that stinks. And so I had to stick my hand in there. And if you've ever, after your teens have done dishes and you're sticking your hand down in a sink or garbage disposal, man, it's slimy and it's nasty. But, you got to do what you got to do at your house because I know my kids aren't going to do it, right? So I dig it all out. I get it and the sink drains. And I'm like, what am I going to do? And so I was having breakfast with some guys about a day or so later. And I was telling them, yeah, my garbage disposal isn't working. And they know, listen, here's the truth that we're just all going to admit. Listen, I can't fix anything. I'm really bad at it. Matter of fact, I'm much better at breaking things than I am fixing things. And so I was at this breakfast with a couple of my friends, and they're like, hey, do you want us to help you fix this? And then I felt really bad because I felt like they were calling me out you can't even fix a garbage disposal. So I did what all people do when you have pride, even though I've been following Jesus for a long time, I still struggle with it. So I said, no, I'm going to do this. So I went to the store and I bought the biggest garbage disposal that you can. I want the one with the most horsepower that you can put a board in and that it'll chew it up. right? So I went there and I got this big, and I'm sure I overpaid for it. You know, they're looking at me like, why are you getting that? Is it for a restaurant? I'm like, no, it's for my home. I have teens. And they smiled. And so I lugged this thing home, right? And I went downstairs and I got my toolbox. Now you have to understand something. My toolbox is not like most people's toolbox because there's only like 5 things in my toolbox because I don't know how to fix things. I have like 3 different screwdrivers with like different heads, and then I have like an adjustable wrench because why have a whole bunch of them when you can have just one where you just adjust it, right? And then I have this giant framing hammer, and I don't know why because you can't use it on anything in a house. And then I have this like giant rubber mallet that I don't know how it got in there, and then I have like a handsaw that I would actually never use on anything. So I have this garbage disposal, and the smart thing would be to look at the directions. But I go, no. So, you know, and I don't know about any of you, but does any of your family store stuff under the sink? So my family, we store stuff. And so, like, it took an hour just to get everything out from under the sink. And I'm just talking to Mom. I'm like, babe, we got to do something about this. We're hoarders, right? So I get under the sink and I have this little light and I look at it and I'm like, man, this is pretty simple. Like it has a universal latch that like you don't even have to do the installation at the sink part. You just have to unlock and the other one lock. And then there's only 2 tubes that go to it, and one of them has a flathead screwdriver and the other one has a flathead screwdriver. So I can use the same screwdriver for both of them. I was pretty pumped, right? And then there was an electrical thing, and my dad was an electrician, so I know a little bit about electricity. And the first thing about electricity is you always turn the breaker off so you don't hurt yourselves. Don't try that at home. Turn the breaker off. So I knew that. So here's what I did. I double checked. It has a little switch that, you know, is like a little kicker switch, little whatever GIF thing in it. So I checked that. I turned the breaker off, and I get under there and I change it. I actually do it. Like I put it all together, and then I run some water in it. And I have the drawers open underneath, and I have a light on it, and I have water running through it. And I hit the button, and it goes, and it sounds like a jet plane. It's gonna chew some stuff off, right? And then so I keep running the water because, you know, I'm not good at fixing things. And my assumption was this thing is going to leak, and I'm going to have to work on it like 3 or 4 different times and make 3 or 4 different stops to the thing. But nothing leaked, and I did a jump for joy. I was like, I finally fixed something on the first try. I was pumped. You know what I did? I sat by the door till my wife came home. I was so proud. Babe, guess what I did? I fixed the sink garbage disposal by myself. To which she replied, are you sure it's really fixed? And I said, yes, look. And I showed her how it didn't leak. And she high-fived me. And she's like, you did it. And she was so proud. She hugged me. I wish they would have given me a medal. So anyway, a couple days go by. And a couple days later, I come home. And my wife looks at me and says, hey, babe, you know, I know it's a little bit of bad timing. You know, our daughter's going back to school, to college, and, you know, you should have a college funding plan because they do grow up and they do go to college, right? Our daughter's going to college. She said, hey, by the way, the dishwasher isn't working. And I said, well, what do you mean it's not working? She goes, she opens it and she says, see, there's a bunch of standing water in the dishwasher. And so me and my stupidity, have you ever done this? Like you ask stupid questions that you know that they've probably already, they've already done. So like me and my stupidity I jump right in. And I go, well, did you like hit the start button again? You know, maybe it just didn't drain. And she looked at me and said, yes, honey, I closed it and restarted it. And I'm a bad husband, I admit this. Have you ever done this as a spouse? Like someone's done something and you think if you hit the switch or you push the button or you stick, like somehow you have a magic touch that your spouse doesn't have. So like I closed the dishwasher and I pushed the start button and it doesn't drain. And she says, I already did that, babe. I said, I know, but I just fixed something. Like, listen, I got this. Right, and so that didn't work. It was still full, and it was nasty, and you could see water was going on everywhere. And we think there's a garbage disposal actually in the dishwasher, and so there's this like little drainage thing. And so I go and I pull it out, and it's horrible. Like, don't ever do that. You need a hazmat. So I pull this thing out, I clean it, and then we do it again, and it still doesn't work. And then my wife asked me a question that I really hated. She goes, "You don't think this has anything to do with you fixing the garbage disposal, do you?" And I puffed my chest up. No, it doesn't. I got it right on the first time. And she said, well, isn't there like a plug in between the drainage thing and the dishwasher? And I went, I don't know. And she goes, well, did you take it out? And I go, I don't know. I said, it's got to be right because look at it, it's working. And so she goes, well, you might want to check that before we pay all the money for a brand new dishwasher. So lo and behold, I have to pull all the stuff out that we haven't thrown away again. And lo and behold, I was right. There's this little plastic piece and this drainage hose that goes from the dishwasher to the garbage disposal that I did knock out if I had just looked at the directions, right? I couldn't get it right on the first time. I had to do it like again. And I was so bummed because I had high-fived, I had conquered the world, I'd finally fixed something on the first time, and I still didn't get it right. If I had just looked at the directions, I would have gotten it right. And it got me thinking, have you ever tried to do something good, but you ended up with a problem? Right? Have you ever tried for good? Like you wanted that relationship to work out. You wanted your finances to work out. You wanted your job to work out. You wanted that to work out. You wanted this thing. Like we wanted good, but we ended up with a problem. Now, when it comes to my dishwasher and my garbage disposal, like it was frustrating. It was time consuming. It cost me a few extra parts and a little bit of extra time. But on the grand scheme of things, not having my my garbage disposal being fixed the first time is small on the scale of life. And it got me thinking, how about you? When it comes to areas of significance in our life, relationally, financially, vocationally, educationally, emotionally, and the areas of significance, have you ever tried for good and ended up with a problem? I mean, think about it. How many of us want a romantic relationship with him or her, and we want it to be good, but we end up with a problem? And it's the first time we haven't had this problem, and it doesn't work the way we had hoped it would. Maybe it's in our finances. We want to have some financial stability and security. We want good, and we try, but we end up in debt or living paycheck to paycheck. Maybe it's in our vocation. You know, we want a job that we love to go to on Monday mornings or Sunday mornings, right? We want a job that we love. We want a job that is significant, a job that meets our needs. And we try for good, and yet we end up in a job that we despise, where we feel stuck in a rat race. And it got me thinking, if we were honest, how many times do you and I aim for good and want good and end up with a problem? Matter of fact, this leads me to my opening truth this morning. Listen, you didn't need to come to church this morning. You don't need to read the Bible. You don't need to know Jesus. Listen, you've experienced this. Matter of fact, it's my opening idea in the insert. It's going to be up here on the screen, and it goes something like this. Everyone lives life hoping for certain results. Listen, everything that you and I do, we do hoping that it leads to the results that we want. And when those results don't happen, it is painful and it is costly. Listen, all the things we do, even if they're stupid, we do things hoping that they lead to a certain result. And when we don't get the results we want, you know what happens? It hurts, and it costs us time, energy, and sometimes it costs us more than we ever wanted to pay. Now think about this. Here's what I've discovered. This is the truth. I've discovered this about all kinds of people everywhere on the planet, young, old, doesn't matter. Listen, everyone does what they do to get the results they want. And then sometimes, here's what I've noticed. From the outside, when you see somebody doing something, hoping to get a certain result, you know what we say? Whoa, that ain't gonna work. I'd check yourself, and that's not gonna, don't do that. Like, how many of us have seen somebody else and said, ooh, you think that's gonna lead there, but that's not gonna lead to what it is that you want. You should stop. I wonder how many times people have looked at me and said, dude, what is wrong with you? Like, you think that thing you're about to do is gonna lead to results you want, but it's not. And this is where we run into a massive, massive problem. We do what we do because we believe it'll get us to where we want to go. And many times the things that we do to get us to where we want to go, it's the only way we know how to do something. And so whatever it is we do that we believe is going to end up where we are, and it's the only way to know when it doesn't work and we end up with a broken dishwasher. That wasn't the problem, it was just a symptom. When we end up where we don't want to be, we go, well, it couldn't be me because, listen, I thought this thing would lead this. It's the only way I know how to do it. So it must be something on the outside. And so you know what we do? We repeat it. We do the exact same thing. Because we go, listen, the results will be different this time. Listen, is this a play? We're going to all be honest. Lusby, if you're watching it, let's just raise your hand if I ask. How many of you have done something a second time and gotten the same results that didn't work the first time? Right, let's be honest. Some of you are lying right now. It's okay. Right, listen. And that's the massive problem is when it's the only thing you know how to do and you honestly believe it'll lead to the results, you know what happens? You and I get stuck doing the same thing, expecting different results. Let me say it again. When you and I think it's the only way to do it, and we've done it before, we get stuck in a cycle where we do the same thing, expecting different results, and it's painful and it's costly. And it leads me asking us this question this morning. How can you and I get unstuck from doing the same thing, expecting different results, so that we don't have to experience the pain and the cost of not getting the very results that we want? Now, there's great news this morning. It's why I'm fired up on Sunday. It's why I love Jesus, God, and the Bible. It's why I love showing up on Sunday mornings. God knew that we would struggle with this. He knew that every generation would have this problem. This was so important because some people, here's, and I just need to say this, some people think, God doesn't really care, but God does care. If anyone wants you to have an amazing life, it's God. And he knew this would be an issue, so he actually had Jesus himself address this very issue of you do what you do to get these results, but you don't get them, and it's the only thing you know how to do, so you do it again expecting different results. Matter of fact, Jesus addresses this very thing. So this morning, let's take a look at what Jesus has to say, because he's the only one that's conquered hell and death, and I trust him. Matter of fact, we see this in the eyewitness account of the Gospel of Mark. It's going to be on the back of your insert. It's in your Bible. We're also going to put it up on the screen. And it says, again, Jesus began to teach by the lake. And the crowd that had gathered around him was so large that he had to get into a boat and sat out on the lake. See, this is what I loved about Jesus. There was something about Jesus that regardless of where you were in your faith, whether you had no faith, some faith, or even different faith, people showed up to hear what Jesus had to say. And I think the reason people showed up to hear what Jesus had to say is because Jesus was a truth teller. Jesus didn't tell people what they wanted to hear. Jesus told them the truth so that they could experience life and life to the full. And we go on. While all the people were along the shore at the water's edge, he taught them many things by parables. And in his teachings, he said, now listen, I want to stop here for a quick second. A parable is a story that teaches a point. Like, my dishwasher was broken, but that wasn't the problem. The problem was my garbage disposal. That is a parable, but it just happens to be a true story in my life, okay? And so he teaches them, and in his teaching, he said this. I said, listen, a farmer went out to sow seed. Now, I'm going to stop here because I don't know about you, but I grew up in the urban jungle. I grew up right outside of D.C. in Alexandria and Arlington and in a community called Burke. It was one of the first. Like, I've never farmed. I have a black hand. Like, I kill things. Like, I don't have a green thumb. I have a dead thumb. I kill plant. Like, I don't know how to grow anything. Like, if I need food, I go to 7-Eleven and get a death dog, right? Like, I don't know anything about farming, raising animals, but these people did. And so Jesus is using some of the understanding. He says, listen, a farmer went out to sow a seed, and as he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. And he continues, and he says, some fell in the rocky places where it didn't have much soil, and it sprang up quickly. And because the soil was shallow, but when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they were withered because they had no root. And it basically said that they died. And then he says, other seed fell among the thorns, which they grew up and they choked out the plants, and they did not bear grain. That's like my yard today. It's green, but there's no grass there, I promise you. It's all weeds that have come out and choked, and it says it choked and it didn't. He said, still, some other seed fell on good soil, and it came up and grew and produced a crop, some multiplying 30, some 60, some 100 times. Now, everyone in the audience listening to this would immediately understand the concept that Jesus was saying, because listen, they didn't have grocery stores coming in their neighborhood. Listen, if they wanted food, they had to grow it. If they wanted spices, they had to grow it. And many of them, that was how they earned income. They grew food for themselves, they grew extra, and then they sold it, and that's how they survived. So listen, seed was costly, seed was important. And so scattering seed to have food and to be able to have a business and sell it was really important. And for 75% of the seeds to not do what it was supposed to do was painful and costly. Sound familiar? You want to get a result, and you do something to get the result, but you end up with a problem. And then Jesus says, those who have ears, let them hear. And when he was alone, the 12 and the others, his disciples around him, asked him, What about that parable? What exactly did that parable mean? I mean, that was really interesting, Jesus. You talked about this hardened path where the seed landed and a bird came and ate it. You talked about the shallow, rocky ground where the seed came up, but as soon as the sun came out, because it was shallow, it withered and died. And you talk about this other seed, thorns and things came along and choked it. It was unfruitful. And only in the good soil did the actual seed experience life. What are you trying to say, Jesus? Explain this to us. And then Jesus, we're going to go to the next one. Then Jesus said to them, don't you understand this parable? How then will you understand any parable? And I want to stop right there. Jesus says, you don't understand this? Jesus says, if you don't understand this, how are you going to understand anything? Jesus is saying this is a key truth. This is a key principle in life. If you don't get this, you're not going to get anything. He says, some people, well, I can go that. The farmer sows, they're tricking me. You can go back. There you go. The farmer sows the word, and some people. So the soil is the people, and the seed is kind of God's instruction on how to live life. That's what Jesus says. Listen, the soil is people, and the seed is like how to live life in a way that works. Some people are like the seed along the path, where the word is sown, and as soon as they hear it, Satan comes and takes away the word that was sown in them. I mean, we've all experienced pain and trauma in a certain area of our life, and when that area comes back up and someone wants to speak goodness or truth or life, we won't hear it because of the pain or trauma. Our life is hardened like a path, and we don't hear it. Others, like the seed sown on the rocky places, they hear the word at once and receive it with joy. It's like church people. Woo! Woo! Let's have a building. Oh, let's give to it. Did that hit too close to home? Sorry. Others are like seeds sown in rocky places. They hear the word at once, receive it with joy, but since they have no root, it lasts only a short time. They're the people who are like, woo, let's do this. And then it gets hard. Like, that's too hard. I'm out. He goes on to say, when trouble or persecution comes because of the word, they quickly fall away. And we're going to continue on. Still others, this is people, still other people are like the seed sown among the thorns. They hear the word, but the worries of this life, the deceitfulness of wealth, and the desire for other things come in and choke the word, making it unfruitful. Saying there's desires and distractions that distract us from this thing that will bring us life. And Jesus says, others are like seeds sown on the good soil, and they hear the word and accept it and produce a crop, some 30, some 60, some 100 times what it was sown. Jesus is telling us, to the people that he was speaking in very plain terms, listen, you're going out in life and you're investing in your choices and you're throwing out seeds and you're making decisions and you're having actions expecting something to happen. You want a desired result. But when you throw it on the hardened path, it doesn't work. When you throw it on the shallow ground, it doesn't work. When you throw it in the weeds where there's thorns that doesn't work. It has to be in good soil. And he says, listen, all of us are living trying to get results, and it's painful and costly when we don't. And it matters. If those seeds that these people were planting didn't take, they weren't eating and they had no income. I wonder how many of us have gone through life trying to get certain results, and we don't get them, and we're not experiencing the life that we want or God wants for us. It matters. So this morning, I want to make 3 brief observations from the teaching of Jesus. Okay, here's the first one. We're going to put it up on the screen. Here's observation number 1. Wanting good results isn't the problem. Everyone should smile. It's okay. We're in church. You're allowed to smile in church. It's okay. Wanting good results is not the problem. It's in the how. It's in the how we try to achieve them that creates the issue. Listen, I get this. Listen, I didn't grow up in church, but the one thing that I thought about church is they were no fun. I would run into these Christians, and they looked sad. They always looked unhappy. And I was like, I don't want that. I want life, and I want some joy in my life. I want to have a good life. And here's what I discovered. I read the Bible for myself instead of looking at other Christians. I read the Bible. And did you know that God created pleasure? Some of you don't look convinced yet. Okay, we're going to go back to Genesis. In the beginning, God said, and here's God's first command, be fruitful, and what comes next? How do you multiply? Chicka, chicka, bow, wow. Listen, I know this is going to be shocking to most of you in a church setting. God created pleasure. God gave us eyes to see the beautiful earth. God gave us ears to hear laughter. God gave us taste buds for bacon and chocolate. Right, here's the thing. We come to church, or maybe our opinion, maybe we have no faith or different faith, maybe our opinion of God is that God doesn't want us to have fun, and so we got to go out. Listen, God wants you to have good things. It's not the good things that are the problem. It's in the how. Listen, God is okay with you being financially stable and having money to pay bills and put a roof over your head. God's okay with you going, listen, at someday I would like to find sexual satisfaction. You know, God's okay with you going, I'd like to have a few things so that I can enjoy life. God is okay with you having success and having notoriety. Those things in themselves aren't bad. It's in the... I'll give you a perfect example. I don't know if any of you have ever been like this. I got a really hard head. I should learn someday. But when my wife and I were first married, we got into we learned about finances and we had gone to this place that taught us you should have a budget. And I don't know about you, but when I heard the word budget, I heard the word prison. I thought, and they were telling you you should budget out and you should do this stuff. And I was like, a budget's a prison. A budget will tell me what I can't spend money on, and I earned it. I'm gonna spend my money any way I want. I'm not gonna have a budget. I'll show the world. And here's what I discovered. A budget isn't a prison. Budget is actually freedom. Not having a budget is a prison. And you might be like, are you sure? And I go, yes, I've tried. See, when you don't have a budget, your money manages you because you don't know what's coming in, you don't know what's going out, you don't know where it's going, so you don't manage your money manages you, and then you end up in a place where you're in debt or you're living paycheck to paycheck, and you don't know where things have gone, and you haven't been a wise steward of the resources God has given you. But when you have a budget, you go, I know how much is coming in and I know where it's going. And now I can manage my money instead of it managing me. So that when my kids go off to college, I can have an emergency fund and I can have an extra if my garbage disposal breaks. I can go actually buy something without having to go on debt. I literally thought, listen, financial freedom was about just doing what I wanted, getting as much money and spending how I want. But the reality is the actions I was taking weren't and didn't lead to the results I wanted. Matter of fact, I ended up way in debt. And then I was even stupider. I tried to borrow my way out of debt. Don't try that. See, it's not wanting good results. God is not against us experiencing. Matter of fact, Jesus in John 10:10 says, the thief has come to steal, kill, and destroy, but I've come that you might have life and life to the full. If there's anybody that wants you to experience life, it's God. He is not a killjoy. He is good. The problem isn't wanting good results in the how. And whenever you and I think we know better than God, it always ends poorly. Trust me, I've done a lifetime worth of that stuff. So it's not the good things, it's not wanting a good crop that's the problem. It's in how we are going to experience the good things that we want out of life. Which leads me to observation number 2 that Jesus makes crystal clear. We're going to put it up on the screen. It's on the other side. There are a couple of core obstacles that everyone faces. Listen, I don't care if you were born in church or you've never been to church. I don't care if you're rich or poor. I don't care if you speak a different language. I don't care if you're young, old, Democratic, Independent, Republican. I don't care. Listen, everyone will have a couple of core obstacles that everyone will face in life. It's just a part of life. Matter of fact, Jesus says, and this is what I love about Jesus, he's a truth teller. He says, in this life, you will have trouble. And Jesus says, here's some of the trouble that you're going to have. You're going to have a hard path. You're going to experience some pain. You're going to experience some trauma. Something's going to happen that is going to alter or change the way you view some area. You're going to experience some pain, and it's just not going to work, and that will bend how you see things. If you're here and you're over 7, you know what I'm talking about. He says, listen, unfortunately, in human nature, when it gets too hard and it's not easy, we will bail. Right? I mean, it's just, you ever seen a kid? Why'd you stop? It was too hard. Just didn't want to do it. Why didn't you study? Oh, I could do something else. Why put in the effort? And there's something about, all of us have done that at some point. Sometimes we just go, no, that's not easy enough. I don't want to do that. I'd rather lay on the couch and binge Netflix. I just told on myself. Right? At some point, you and I will miss something because we said, no, but it's just too hard. I don't want to do it. Another obstacle we face is we get distracted by desires. There are things that we want that in an appropriate setting are good, but in an inappropriate setting or in an illegitimate timing are bad for us. Let me give you an example, because this has happened to me. How many of you have ever had like homework due? Anybody ever had homework due? Remember when you were in high school? Okay. How many of you had homework due? Or maybe it was like work that you had to take home because you had a project to get done. Or maybe it was like your personal finance. Like, have you ever had something that you just needed like 30 to an hour of like focused time that you just really needed to do? Okay, anybody? Okay, 3 of you. That's great. I can see this can work, okay? Has this ever happened to you? Like someone texts you, or you see like your Facebook, you got like a Facebook message, right? And so here's what we've done, whether it's a computer game on your phone, or whether it's like Facebook or Snapchat. How many of us have ever said, I'm just gonna get onto Facebook or Snapchat, or I'm just gonna play just for a second? Right? How many, like, I'm just gonna get on Facebook for a second. And then you get onto Facebook, or you get into your game for a second on your phone, or you get on your Snapchat, or you get on your Instagram, and all of a sudden, 2 hours later, you're like, I didn't study very well for that test. Oh, I wrote like 1 word on the project that I was supposed to do. Like, I didn't even work on my bill. Like, how many of us have been distracted by something that felt good but wasn't necessarily good for us? You see, Jesus says, listen, the reality is that all of us have some core obstacles that everyone is going to face. But here's the most important thing that Jesus wants you and I to know, and I think it's the most important thing that we take away from today. Matter of fact, it's my third and final point, and it says, not understanding this key truth keeps us stuck in life. Jesus says, if you don't understand this principle, if you don't understand this truth, how are you going to understand anything? Well, what is the key truth? And here's the key truth. The seeds weren't the problem. What was the problem? The soil. The seeds were never the problem. It was always the soil. And who did the soil represent? People. Now listen, none of you are going to like this. I didn't like it when I wrote it. I didn't like it when I talked about it. I didn't like it when I was thinking about it. When I have reoccurring problems in my life, do you know what the common denominator is? Me. If you have a reoccurring problem in your life, guess who the common denominator is? Oh, y'all didn't seem very excited. Like, can we try that one more? Y'all didn't have a problem saying you, me, right? Easy to say, Pastor Matt, you, look at you, right? Okay. When you have a reoccurring problem, what is the common denominator? Right? We know that. We know that it's us. And even though we wish it wasn't true, it doesn't change the fact. If we don't understand that when we have a reoccurring problem that we're the common denominator, we'll always be trying to fix the dishwasher instead of fixing the garbage disposal, which is the real problem. We'll always be trying to solve the symptoms and not the problem. And that's how we stay stuck doing the same thing, expecting different results. I have a question. How many of you here today are trying to solve the symptom instead of the problem? True embarrassing story. When my adopted mom and dad took me in, I was pretty messed up. I had a lot of problems, and God's grace worked, and I became a follower of Jesus, but I was a knucklehead even as a follower of Jesus. And when they first took me in, they tried to give me rules, and they tried to help me out. And the great thing about my parents is they had hard lives growing up. My adopted parents, they had hard lives growing up, and they had learned some lessons the hard way, and they had learned some lessons the hard way, and they were trying to help me not have to learn lessons the hard way. And especially in my dating life, I always seemed to pick, I just had a bad picker. I'd always pick these people. It just wouldn't work out. And I would start dating, and my adopted mom and dad would pull me aside and say, son, like, this isn't going to end the way you think it is. And I always say, I know better. I got this, mom and dad. You don't know them like I know them. This is going to work out. And then it would end in heartbreak, or I would fail them, or we'd break up, right? And I would be all sad and mad and do stupid things, because that's how I was back in the day. And graciously, my adopted parents would never say, I told you so, right? But then I would start dating someone else, and then you know what they do? They pull me aside and they say, man, your picker isn't working real well right now. You ought to think about this. This isn't going to end. And I would say, I know better. Right? And I would end up and like this would happen multiple, like I just did the same thing expecting different results. And it was always someone else's fault. It was always circumstances. It was always something around, but it could have never been me. But then finally I hit my head against the wall enough. I said, ouch, that hurts. And it's amazing. The last time I went and talked to my adopted mom and dad about dating, I listened to their advice and I married the person who they had said, that might work for you. 23 years, she stuck with me. Yeah, she's a saint, putting up with me. Which leads us to a truth today. Listen, it leads us to a truth today. Can everyone look up here? Everyone look at the screen, look at me, right? Listen, here's a truth that is hard to hear, but is good for you. Matter of fact, we're going to put it up on the screen, and it's in your insert, and it says, sometimes you are the obstacle that keeps what you hope for in your life. Sometimes you are the obstacle that keeps you from what you hope for in life. Sometimes the obstacle that is keeping you from the very thing you want is, sometimes the thing that is the obstacle keeping me from the things I want in life is, sometimes it's me. Now listen, Jesus doesn't say that to guilt, like this isn't a guilt trip. This isn't a guilt trip. This isn't to make you feel bad. This isn't to shame you. Jesus says it because he loves you and wants you to stop investing on working on the stupid dishwasher and fix the garbage disposal right. Because if you and I try to solve the symptom and not the problem, we'll always end up with the same results that we don't want. And you know what? Jesus loves you too much to not tell us the truth whether you believe him or not. He loves us enough to tell us a parable about some seeds that falls in a soil that doesn't work. And it's not the seeds, it's the soil. Now as I close with a true story. Oh man, this is a funny story. It's funny. There was this owner of a business, and it was like this construction business that did stuff like in kind of a downtown metropolitan area. And he had kind of a small business owner, and he had a couple trucks. And in his truck, he was a follower of Jesus. And so sometimes followers of Jesus, we get all pumped about Jesus, and sometimes we get WWJD bracelets. I never put anything on my car because I don't drive well enough to represent Jesus well. So I don't put anything. But this business owner thought, man, listen, I live in a metropolitan area. I love Jesus. And so they got a honk if you love Jesus bumper sticker, right? And the thing is one day he wasn't using his truck, and one of the other workers needed to go to a job. And so one of the workers used his truck and was driving around and doing all this work and getting all this stuff. And then the driver came back and he said, how'd the day go? And he said, man, today was weird. And so the owner said, well, why was today weird? And he said, man, I got honked at everywhere I went. He's like, it was aggravating. It's like, I didn't think I did anything wrong. I'm a good driver. I don't know why people are honking me. He's like, well, what did you do? And he's like, well, I flipped him the bird. And he said, what? He's like, yeah, if you honk at me, you know what I'm going to say to you? International howdy doody. And the boss was like, he just put his hand in his head. He goes, you realize you were driving my truck? And he's like, yeah, so what? And he's like, these people are rude. They're honking at me. He's like, well, I do have this bumper sticker that says, honk if you love Jesus on the back. And the guy's facial expression, he's like, do I still have a job? He's like, yes, just try not to flip people off anymore. Now we all laugh and we all kind of get that. But the guy in the truck didn't want to be honked at, but yet he was driving around in a truck that said, honk if you love Jesus. I wonder how many of us are going around getting results we don't want because we're trying to solve the symptom and not the problem. And we keep doing the same thing, expecting different results. And it creates pain and hurt that you don't want and that God doesn't want for you. And so here's what I want you to do. You might be saying, well, what's the takeaway today? Well, the takeaway is this. Come back next week. No, seriously, typically when I do a series, it's all one giant sermon. I just can't do it in one setting. Or I could, but you all would never come back. So I break it up over a bunch. And so here's the takeaway. Come back next week. And maybe a takeaway for some of you would be, go home, get your Bible, and read Mark 4, 1 through 20, and kind of read this parable, and maybe God will speak something. But here's what I know Jesus doesn't want for you, and here's what I know we don't want for you. We don't want for any of us to be trying to solve the symptom instead of the problem. And so we end up with pain and cost. Let me pray. Hey, God, thank you. Thank you for loving us enough to tell us a hard truth that, if we were really honest, we don't like to hear. But thank you, Jesus, that you loved us enough to not tell us what we wanted to hear, but you loved us enough to tell us the truth. God, thank you for loving us enough to tell it in a way that makes sense, of using a parable of a seed, and it wasn't the seed, it was the soil. And how that when you plant that seed, you hope for one thing, but if you don't get it, it hurts. Thank you for telling us the truth and making it real to us, God. Thank you, Jesus, that there's a possibility that we can become good soil because of what you did on the cross. God, help us to ask the question, is there anything that we're doing the same way, but we're getting the same old results, and we might be the problem? God, speak to our hearts. Thank you for loving us. This is our prayer. In Jesus' name, amen.
Hey, I'm Elisa Costas, the Small Groups Director for SouthPoint Church. I hope you'll join us right here every week for SouthPoint Online. You'll hear some online exclusive announcements, plus more about what's happening at SouthPoint. You know, one of the biggest and best things about SouthPoint is our volunteer team. We have a crew of people who just get it done with such huge hearts, and that's what I want to talk about this week in announcements. We have a volunteer dinner coming up this Thursday at 6:30 p.m. at Patuxent Presbyterian Church. They're letting us use their space to host this dinner, and we want an opportunity to really get together with all of our volunteers at SouthPoint and say, hey, it's because of you that so many amazing things get done. And we do have some volunteer opportunities that I'd like to talk about as well. Our worship team is looking for musicians and singers. So if you can play an instrument of any kind, can you play a mandolin? Can you play a tambourine? Who knows? The worship team wants to talk to you, and if you sing as well, they're looking to talk to you. We're also getting ready to start up a parking lot team. You know, over the years, SouthPoint has grown larger, and we have more and more traffic coming in and out of our campuses on Sundays. So we're looking for some amazing, friendly volunteers to help guide and park cars on Sunday mornings at SouthPoint. You can talk to Derek or Mandy Anderson about that. And the last thing I want to talk about is something that we're doing at SouthPoint. We've got a school supply drive. Specifically, we're supporting SouthPoint solo parents and Green Holly Elementary. You can get a list at Walmart or at Staples or any of the stores that carry school supplies. And if you can just help support our school supply drive, that would be fantastic. Last but not least, I want to give a shout out and a big, you guys are awesome, to our team who just returned from Guatemala from a week-long missions trip. They went and served and really just made a humongous difference. So welcome back, guys. We're going to look forward to hearing in the next couple of weeks all about that trip to Guatemala. That's pretty much it for announcements this week. Again, make sure you subscribe to SouthPoint Online and join us right here each and every week. If you're ready to take the next step in your spiritual journey or continue to support SouthPoint, you can connect to a small group, serve on a team, and give financially by clicking the box on the right. To watch other sermons from SouthPoint Church, click the playlist on the left. Click the logo to subscribe.